Mayor Williams and the Wilmington Police Department have both agreed that community policing is a key step towards reducing crime in the city of Wilmington. But as we've seen, that's been done and we need to do more. How will you address the issue of violent crime in the city of Wilmington?
Well, thank you, Amy, and this is a very important issue. I've come out in favor of community policing. I feel it's absolutely critical that we get police officers out of squad cars. But I believe that also the Attorney General's office has a responsibility to develop a relationship with the community, the people of the city of Wilmington. I think it's critical because if people are going to report crimes, they want to feel comfortable. They want to know that they're going to be prosecuted and handled correctly. So I've come out in favor of actually having attorney generals, deputy attorney generals, out there in the streets creating relationships with the community. I've insisted as well on pushing for prosecutions of gun crimes as well. No more pleading these things away. We need to have people actually serving mandatories when they commit a gun crime. So this, together with the pushing for the homicide unit, which I'm really excited to say that the yells for the homicide unit have been heard. And I'm excited to say that the homicide unit is coming to Wilmington. So that's part of my plan.
Thank you, Mr. Kittila. Catherin Damavandi, next response.
Having worked in the Attorney General's office, I understand what the Attorney General's office can do or can't do. When you are Delaware's top cop or chief law enforcement officer, that doesn't mean that you put cops out on the street. So we're not running for mayor of Wilmington or police chief. What the Attorney General's office should be doing is reestablishing its career criminal unit. And that will have our career criminals being targeted by the most effective and experienced prosecutors in the office. The other thing that the Attorney General's office should do is use its crime strategies unit to address the loss of working class jobs in our community. When we target the career criminals with the crime strategies unit, those people will be charged for what they should be brought to justice on. So we have to understand that crime in Delaware is a business. The people who bring drugs, guns, and violence into our communities are operating a business. So charging those persons with habitual offenses and racketeering and those type of crimes will take them off the streets and make our neighborhoods safer. In addition, we bring in the working class jobs to stabilize the community.
Thank you, Catherin Damavandi, and Matt Denn next.
Alan, I disagree with what my opponents have said about the role, the interaction between the AG's office and the state police, and I hope we can come back to that. But I understand the question to be more broadly about dealing with the crime problem. And I think with our state's homicide rate at its worst pace in recent history, it's really imperative for a candidate for Attorney General to have a detailed plan to address it, and I do have such a plan. I put out a 7-point plan several weeks ago dealing with the basic law enforcement side of it, and as I mentioned earlier, that involves things such as having heightened and more visible presence of law enforcement officers in high crime areas, strict prosecution of drug crimes and enterprise crimes, and very high-level scrutiny of bail and pre-sentence release decisions, as well as closer relations with the community. And as I also mentioned earlier, there has to be a second part to that, which is dealing with some of the underlying causes of crime, such as our very high substance abuse rate in our state, the high rate of recidivism that we have with our inmates who are being released from our prisons, and the absence of an adequate number of after-school and summer programs for juveniles. I think there has to be a comprehensive approach, and I've put out a very detailed plan as to how I would address the crime problem.
Thank you, Matt Den. And final response in this round, David Graham.
Yes, thank you. I've been walking the streets of Wilmington for the last 40 years. I still walk the streets of Wilmington because I work in the Carvel office building, and it's sad to see Wilmington in the state that it's in. And when you hear my opponents talking about what they will or won't do, well, one of the things I did was I talked to a prosecutor, a former prosecutor. I've talked to state police officers to get the input from the community about what's wrong with the city of Wilmington. And it seems in Delaware that we have a law we're not allowed to look outside our state for solutions to our problems. And as a person with a business background, I know I don't have to do all the original thinking in this matter. And as far as community policing, we used to have community policing when the policemen walked the beat, and we've gotten far away from that, and it's going to take a long time to get back to that. We have to look, and one thing they've missed here is about 96%, a former prosecutor provided this statistic to me, of people who are incarcerated are released from prison back into the community. Okay. And when I walk down the street, it's a revolving door.
All right, very well. It seems as though we do have a little bit of a difference of opinion here, so let's begin discussion. Crossfire round where you may interrupt one another within reason. For the radio audience, it might be good for you to give your name if you intervene. Whoever wants to talk.
I'd like to speak. We have a disagreement, I do, with my Democratic opponent on what the Attorney General's office can or cannot do. And the Attorney General's office does not direct the state police on what to do, and they don't direct the Department of Correction on what to do. That's what the governor's office does. So my opponent's plan on what can be done for Delaware is not a plan for the Attorney General. It's a plan for either the governor or the lieutenant governor. So if you look at that plan closely, you'll see that these are solutions that should be implemented now. We should not be waiting for an election to put these plans into action. We're in a crisis. Delaware is facing sky-high crime. We've been named, unfortunately, in national papers as having a city that's the #1 most dangerous small city in the United States. Why are we waiting to putting this into effect? This plan should be implemented now, and it can be done by the lieutenant governor now.
I would query as well, this is Ted Kittila, by the way, why the lieutenant governor has decided now that this is the time to put his plan forward. He's serving as lieutenant governor. He has the opportunity to do this right now. I would suggest that he has the opportunity to do this at this stage rather than running for attorney general. So my concern right now is, why chase a new seat when you have the opportunity to do this?
Alan, can I jump in? This is Matt Denn. First of all, I'm the only candidate, as far as I can tell, who's actually issued a detailed plan for dealing with the crime problem. And as I said, I think it's really the responsibility of a serious candidate for this office to put out a plan that voters can look at and see what they would do if they were elected. And as far as I know, unless I've missed it, I'm the only one who's done that. And I would be delighted if the state today decided to pick up the plan that I put out and execute it. But the reality is that and this is where I disagree with my opponents pretty strongly. The Attorney General is the central law enforcement figure in the state and has a compelling role in trying to organize and direct criminal justice efforts in the state, is provided and is due a lot of deference from other agencies, including the General Assembly and the governor. I'm very aware of the fact that the Attorney General doesn't run the state police. I actually was thinking about it this morning. In 2002, I actually helped write the law that created the Department of Safety and Homeland Security that does run the state police. So I'm intimately familiar with how the state police are run. But I think that what the statement that the Attorney General doesn't run the state police reveals is just a very, very narrow view of the Attorney General's role in the state as far as helping to coordinate criminal justice issues. And it's a view that I gather that my opponents share, and it's a view that I just reject. And unlike them, I think that the Attorney General should be a very vocal leader on criminal justice issues, even those that don't directly involve people who work directly for the Department of Justice. And among other things, that does involve trying to get multiple jurisdictions, state police, Newcastle County Police, probation and parole officers into neighborhoods, out of their cars, on the street, providing a very visible law enforcement presence in our communities that doesn't currently exist. So it's just a difference of opinion, I think, about the role of the Attorney General, but I think that the Attorney General can and should play a central role in organizing those types of cross-jurisdictional efforts, and I would intend to do that.
Just go another minute. Does David Graham want to?
Certainly I do.
Yes.
And I believe we're taking a narrow look, and I'm not disagreeing with any one of my opponents, but the Attorney General is only going to be as successful as the people he engages in solving the problems. For example, I've checked, and we have an excellent new corrections commissioner, former superintendent of the state police, Mr. Robert Koop, who I understand is making great headway with that. And it gets back to my statement. It's a leadership and a management position. The Attorney General is only as good as the deputy attorney generals that are working for him.
And I'm going to jump in, if I could. This is Catherin Damavandi. This is not a matter of being a difference of opinion. This is Delaware law. When I worked at the Attorney General's office, one of the roles I served, I was counsel to the Department of Correction. The Department of Correction and the Delaware State Police are both part of the governor's office, but we provided legal advice to them. So while I could advise my client, the Department of Correction, on what to do, the Attorney General cannot tell the Department of Correction what to do, and they can't tell the Delaware State Police what to do. They are cabinet members of the governor's office. So the proposal to put more state police out on the street, to have them work with probation and parole, to have more anti-recidivism programs, those are things that are brought by the Department of Correction and the Delaware State Police, and they're funded by the governor's office. They have nothing to do with the Attorney General's office. The Attorney General prosecutes crime and provides legal advice to state agencies. They don't tell the state agencies what to do. They're just their attorney.